Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, and as promised, we have the first in Australian eloquence / Decca's two Knappertsbusch boxes. Der Kana, as he was jocularly known among orchestral musicians who loved him because he hated to rehearse. He liked to sit around and tell dirty jokes. And of course, he didn't make them work, so they adored him like crazy. He was such a jolly guy. And we will get to him in a moment. But what I want to mention is that these sets are also being reviewed on ClassicsToday.com by Jed Disler with sound clips. So if you are an insider member this week, and of course, if this is the year 2775, that's irrelevant. It's already there. But do look at ClassicsToday.com for the two Knappertsbusch box reviews by our very own Jed Disler. And we decided to divvy this up because I have the video channel and he can do that. And it gives us an opportunity to give these sets a 1-2 punch, because Knappertsbusch is quite a fascinating character. I have to be honest and say, as I'm shaking this around, he was the epitome of a local talent, truly a local talent. He had a very limited repertoire. He recorded even less of it because he didn't like making recordings, because he didn't like doing work, and he didn't like securing accurate results. So of course he didn't like making recordings. It goes without saying. He didn't much care for that bit, and so he didn't travel. He wasn't like guest conducting anywhere. He just hung around Germany and did the standard German repertoire, particularly Wagner. He wasn't very good at music of the classical period. He wasn't very good at even things that weren't Wagner. He was very good in the theater. He really was. He was a real man of the theater. In the opera house, yes, the performances could be, droopy unto death and whatnot, but he was very considerate of his singers, who he sometimes screamed at. He really cared about them more than he did about the orchestra. And so, as a result, his output is somewhat limited. There's tons and tons of live stuff and wildly variable. And I do have to say this. We just did a video on conductors who did not like to make recordings or who sounded better in the studio than they did live. Knappertsbusch actually probably was on average better in his studio recordings than he was in his live ones, because the live ones, God only knows what could happen. At some point, I'll do another video on some of his live recordings because they're available. They're in a big Veritas box, or a couple of them, and they're on Scribendum, and there's just tons and tons of this stuff. And most of it is just horrible beyond all words, but in sort of a fun way, because it's just so bad. You can't imagine this guy had a career, but he did. He did. He was beloved. And this set comes with excellent liner notes, booklet notes. And we're just going to go through it. These are all of his recordings on Decca, Polydor, and Westminster. So that's quite a few things. And there's some really early stuff, which we can sort of pass over rather quickly and get to the things that matter. And the stuff that matters, everybody's heard a billion times, and everybody knows what it is. It's just the way it is. But here it is again, supposedly remastered. It sounds basically the way it's always sounded. There's no reason, if you already own this stuff, I think, to run out and get the box, unless there's serious stuff you haven't gotten. And if you don't know Knappertsbusch, I do have to say this does represent him as an orchestral conductor pretty well. It really, really does. So we're going to do first, let's start at the beginning. Beethoven Piano Concertos 4 and 5 with Clifford Curzon and the Vienna Philharmonic. Now, I described this at one point in some review or other that I wrote, which Jed reminded me of, as putting Curzon and Knappertsbusch together was like wearing a tuxedo to go to a roller derby. And that is what it is. Curzon is his typically immaculate and probing self. Knappertsbusch is just a mess. It's not terrible, but it's just so casual and and uninterested compared to what Curzon is doing. It's really kind of a fascinating juxtaposition. And if you believe that a concerto is, the melding of two very dissimilar sometimes personalities, well, they aren't going to get much more dissimilar than this, at least in terms of their execution and finish and thoughtfulness. So, are they great Beethoven performances? Well, it depends on how you define the term, doesn't it? I would say probably not at this point. Then we have the Brahms Second Symphony with the Orchestra de la Suisse Romande. Not bad. Not bad at all. And Knappertsbusch and Brahms could just be unbelievable. There is a Brahms third with, I believe it's with Staatskapelle Dresden. And I will find it and play you a sample of it at some point. If it kills me, I will do it. Where the opening is so drawn out and so awful and so unbelievably not together, even at the excruciatingly slow tempo, that you just have to hear it. It's hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. But the second, he usually did better. And there are a couple versions of him doing it out and about. And this is not bad. It's really not bad. Maybe it was also because he had the Orchestra de la Suisse Romande, and they actually wanted to make a good showing in it, or he felt that he needed to do something a little different than he would with the usual German crew, who he would assume knew it, and he wouldn't have to do anything. Anyway, everyone worked, and it shows. The finale, yeah, okay, it's a little droopy. It's still a little droopy, but it's okay. It's a good, decent, solid performance of a work that's been done unbelievably well a billion times by other people. So do you need this? You tell me. It's there. Then we have the second piano concerto with Curzon and the Vienna Phil, which is far better than the Beethovens. I mean, the accompaniment is far, far more disciplined, and I think that's probably because the solo part is so closely integrated with the orchestra that everybody had to wake up and pay attention. I mean, at least in the orchestra and from the conductor's podium, he had to actually notice what the soloist was doing and take charge once in a while. So good for them. They did it. Then we get the Brahms Academic Festival Overture, the Tragic Overture, the Variations on a Theme by Haydn, and the Alto Rhapsody, which is quite well sung by Lucretia West, who was absolutely excruciating in the Scherchen-Mahler 2 from sort of around this same time. Remember that? Oh, God, it was awful. But she's really good in the Alto Rhapsody. And the other stuff, I mean, it's not ridiculously slow. I mean, the Tragic Overture is actually 12 minutes on the zippy side, believe it or not. And so the performances are okay. I think the Academic Festival is a little clunky sounding, but hey. And the Haydn Variations are okay. They're in tempo, and there's nothing special going wrong and nothing really enthralling going right. And that's just the way it is. Then we get Bruckner. Bruckner, yes. First, the third. Now, he loved the third. Absolutely adored the third. And he did the shock version of the third, Knappertsbusch did, and it's pretty good. I mean, he loved these symphonies, probably because they were slow enough that he could, take a breath mint in between, the exposition and the development section, or run off to the bathroom if he had a pee, and nobody would notice the difference, I think. Or he could sort of start it and let it run, and it didn't make any, he was fine with it. And then the fourth, the Romantic, which is, again, these are all the old editions with the terrible, awful cuts and reorchestrations and all that other stuff. But, his love of the music comes through. Now, let's see. The third is with the Vienna Phil. The fourth is with the Vienna Phil, coupled with an almost 20-minute long Siegfried Idyll. Partly that may be the piece, though, not the performance. I mean, you all know that I detest the Siegfried Idyll unless it's played in under 17 minutes most of the time, except for Bruno Walter, because he could get away with it. But, what a dreary piece of music. Then the fifth with all the cuts and the percussion at the end. And this is also with the Vienna Phil. It's kind of fun. I mean, it is fun. And if you want to hear that edition, in a creaky German Kapellmeisterish provincial performance style, because it's Vienna Philharmonic, so it's not like a provincial performance, but it's a provincial performance style, flavor. Why not? It's okay. It doesn't bother me. And then we've got a couple Wagner excerpts, the Dawn and Siegfried's Rhine Journey and Siegfried's Funeral March, which are fun. I mean, that's fun, and it's Wagner and it's Knappertsbusch. And then we've got, oh my God, this gruesome, horrible, unbearably bad performance of the Eighth. Can you blame them? It's just atrocious. It's with the Munich Phil. The playing is horrible. It was on Westminster. It's been a joke since the day it was released. And that's just it. So it remains. So it remains. And then we have him doing Strauss. Now he's got Don Juan, which is plenty of fun, and Death and Transfiguration. Now, these are interesting for several reasons. Because, first of all, because it's with the Paris Conservatory Orchestra, which is always interesting to hear, especially in this music. Knappertsbusch makes no effort, really, to keep them together, and they're not, quite often. Don Juan is the better of the two performances. It's not absurdly slow. It is considerably unidiomatic. I mean, it's not. It's a lively performance, and it has some rough and ready ensemble, but it's fun to listen to. It truly is. Death and Transfiguration, on the other hand, is really quick, but it's quick in all the wrong places. It never comes close to Transfiguration. Never, 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 never. We're not anywhere near the Verklärung. I mean, it's nothing clair or fair about it. And the orchestra sound, it's fun to hear this orchestra play this stuff. I'm sorry. I just like them, as you know. But, this is not really very good from the conductor's point of view. He seems really not to know or care how to shape the work. And it's really kind of funny. It's like the slow bits are fast, the fast bits are slow, and the whole giant climax is doesn't sit well. It's fun. What can I say? It's fun. It's fun. It's fun in its sort of casual badness. It's fun. And then we have Wagner stuff. Okay. So we have Meistersinger excerpts. Now, some of this stuff, I'm looking at this, is very, very old stuff from 1927, 1928. There are some Meistersinger things. And, of course, the sound is extremely limited. And the performances are usually fine because Knappertsbusch was usually fine. And the Ride of the Valkyries and Parsifal, this is from 28. These are the old Polydor recordings. And the Venus Bacchanal from Tannhäuser, which is, boy, one limp noodle of an orgy. Oh, well. And the entry of the guests, and these are all from like the 1920s anyway. And the Flying Dutchman Overture from 27. These are with the Berlin Philharmonic, some of these things anyway. And, I mean, they're okay, but they're from the 1920s. I mean, why? I'm not saying they shouldn't be in the box. They should be. Of course, they should be. We should get everything we can possibly get by him that he did for that label. But I'm not going to be returning to these for any particular insights. And then we've got the Rienzi Overture with the London Philharmonic. That's from 48. Okay, so now we're in in the post-discovery of electricity era. And they're okay. And the Lohengrin Prelude to Act 1 with the Tonhalle Orchestra of Zurich from 47. And the Prelude to Act 3, again with the London Phil from the same period. And the Meistersinger Prelude with the Orchestra de la Suisse Romande, quite nicely done, I have to say. I mean, not at all embarrassing. And the Suite from Act 3, which is the Prelude, the Dance of the Apprentices, and the Procession of the Guilds. And that's fine. That's with the London Phil. And those are relatively short snippets. So they're fine. And then we have another overture and Venusberg Bacchanal, the London Phil, which is no more orgiastic than the first one was. No. And you just got to, Knappertsbusch was usually not one to whip things up into a frenzy. Frenzy was not his modus operandi. And then we've got, more Wagner, the Rienzi Overture. Oh, gosh, it's really stiff. And the forest murmurs, which it doesn't matter what you do with them, they're silly no matter how you play it. The Parsifal, prelude to Act One, and Scene with the Flower Maidens, and some, let's see, and the transformation music from Parsifal with Franz Lechleitner and Günther Treptow, and in the Flower Maiden scenes, and the female voices of the Vienna Staatsopernchor with the Vienna Phil. I mean, it's fun to hear the Vienna Phil from this period. You know, they weren't a terribly good orchestra until they hit the 60s. Honestly, they were very, very scruffy, especially following, the period immediately following the Second World War. And the Decca recordings were often rather screechy and shrill. And so, it's a historical moment. Is it great music making? Nah, not really. Okay, then we get the Flying Dutchman Overture and the Ride of the Valkyries and another overture and Venusberg Bacchanal with the Vienna Philharmonic, maybe the clunkiest yet. And now we're into the 50s. And then we've got, let's see, the Meistersinger Prelude to Act 1 and the Tannhäuser Overture again with the Munich Phil, and then the Tristan and Isolde Prelude and Liebestod, and the Parsifal Prelude to Act 1. I mean, you will have your favorite versions of all these excerpts, and you can listen to Kna and see how they compare and see what you think. He's sometimes hot, and sometimes he's himself. That's all I can say. Then we've got, let's see, more stuff. Oh, this never ends. More with Munich, the Rienzi Overture, slower than ever, 13 minutes plus. Ooh, and the Flying Dutchman Overture, which went from, wait a minute, there's a wonderful comparison here because we just had one that was 10 minutes and 32 seconds with the Vienna Phil in 53, and with the Münchner Philharmoniker, it's up to 12 minutes and 20 seconds. So it's gotten 2 minutes slower, not to its benefit. And then the Siegfried Idyll, which is exactly the same timing as before, 19 minutes and a bit, which is just... Yeah, I know. I tried. I listened to both of them. Fortunately, I was reading a book at the time. And then we got Lohengrin Prelude to Act 1 again, and it's lovely. Now, the classical favorites recordings. Now, the classical favorites consist mostly of light music. And I will say, Kna was a terrific conductor of light music because, of course, he didn't rehearse it. Everyone knew it. He got up there and said, okay, folks, Blue Danube, go for it. And it's quite marvelous, most of it. You get the, Radetzky March and Karl Komsak's Badner Mädel or Maidens or Mädeln or whatever it's called, and the Annen Polka, the Acceleration Waltz, the Tritsch-Tratsch Polka, and the Wiener Burger Waltzes by Zierer, and Johann Strauss to Leichtes Blut, and the Tales of the Vienna Woods, and it's all just fun. Good, clean fun. And then we get something called, this is the classical favorites. And first is Vienna Holiday, then we get all-time popular favorites. It consists of Nikolai's Merry Wives of Windsor, and there's some pretty zoftig wives in there, but they're merry enough. And we have Weber's Introduction to the Dance, by Berlioz orchestrated, and Schubert March Militaire in D major, Opus 51, number 1, in a little orchestration, which is fun. It's actually cut to ribbons in these orchestral versions. And then, I just love this picture. Wait a minute. Here's the picture that, he looks like he just got, unwrapped from some sort of nightmare horror movie about a plastic surgeon run amok. There's that fabulous photo. You want to, wake up to that every morning. It's like, see that? Ooh, boy. Yeah, scary. But no, then we have the best of all is his Nutcracker Suite. He loved the Nutcracker Suite. And as I said before, the other recording on Audita of his live, RI or RAIS or RI, whatever it is, Radio in the American Sectors, RIAS recordings, the Nutcracker was a German Kapellmeister's vision of musical pornography because it was just, all that color, all that gorgeous orchestration, all those luscious melodies, all that hedonistic wallowing in non-contrapuntal music. Oh, goodness, it's all so tawdry. And he just adored it. And his performance of it was a little weird. It was sort of strange, but that was because he was just, thrilling to the prurient aspects of the music. And that's what's in the box. I mean, that's it. It's the whole box. What can I say about this stuff? He was characterful. He was a character. He was a flavorful person. He had personality. He was not a very good conductor. He was like I said, a local talent. I think that really describes him. And if you want to sort of know what was going on in Germany just before the war, during the war, just after the war, Knappertsbusch is your guy. He's the one you want to listen to because he will give you a very good sense of the average workmanlike level of musicianship that obtained at the time. And the reason, frankly, that conductors like Toscanini and Zell and even Karajan and those were so necessary, and how much they did to raise the level of execution and professionalism and technical polish of music making at the time. And I know that there will be some who say, well, all that technical polish, it's all bad. Well, it's like saying electricity is bad or antibiotics are bad. No, it was all to the good, period. Because we had mediocre talents who exploited technical excellence to hide their mediocrity, and people like Knappertsbusch who did not hide their mediocrity. They reveled in it. Is that a good thing? It's up for you to say. It's not for me to say. It's up for you to decide. Let me put it that way. So keep on listening. Friends, thanks so much for joining me. Take care.